Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys stopping by to check out today's video. And guys, today we're going to be talking about professional fishing sponsorships and sort of how it's changed. And I really want to sort of compare the heyday of sponsorships, which was back in the late 90s and early 2000s, to where it is today, and sort of give you guys a little history of how it's progressed or regressed, depending upon how you want to look at it, since I started fishing professionally back in the mid 80s. So we're going to get into that today's video. And also guys, y'all know it's right in the middle of holiday season. I'd like to invite everybody to check out my Tackle Warehouse link on the Black Friday sales. Man, they got stuff going on now, like up to 75% off on tackle there at Tackle Warehouse. Excuse me. And if you're interested in getting you some, I'll put, like I said, my Tackle Warehouse Black Friday sale link in the description of this video. If you guys want to use that link, it's a good way to help the channel out here. So much appreciated. Okay, guys, let's talk a little bit. What I want to do is I'm going to start in the 80s and I'm going to move up to today. And I'm sort of going to lay it out, the reality of the situation, because I get a lot of people interested in this. And it is an interesting human interest aspect of professional fishing and a reality of the sport. And I think it's going to surprise you to see how things have shaken out over the past 40 years. So back when I started, back in the mid 80s, from about the mid 80s into the mid 90s, a lot of stuff was pretty much unchanged as far as sponsorships. The vast bulk, I'm gonna say like 95% plus of the sponsorships in professional bass fishing were like your boat and motor companies and your tackle companies, and rod and reels and that type of stuff. You didn't have these non-endemic companies like, my title sponsor, Bridgeford Foods Company. That just didn't exist back then during that, mid 80s to mid 90s. And during that period, the sponsorship levels weren't that great, but they were okay based upon the fact there wasn't that many pros out there. And, the cost of living was a lot less back then. So back then, a good deal, if somebody had a really good deal as a sponsorship, they usually got what was called a demo boat, which, in other words, a boat company would let you use a boat at no charge for a year. And then you either had to sell it and give them back the money, or you had to turn the boat back in. There was a lot of deals like that going around. And then there was some sponsorship money as far as retainer fees, like from lure companies and rod and reel companies. And most of the time, these retainers average between like $200 to $500 a month, for like a lure sponsorship or something like that with products. So with the entry fees being very low back then, entry fees, even for like the top 100s were only like $1,000, and everything being cheaper, and the prize money being, relatively decent considering, how much you got for it. You could scrape by and make an okay living fishing if you qualified for the Classic. And this went on for 10 years, and it started to change. The thing that changed everything was actually the formation of FLW in 1996. And for as much that I see that influx of FLW into the sport in 1990, eventually it turned out to be a bad thing for our sport. But at the time, and for the next 10 years, from about the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, from about 96, 97 up into about 2004, that was the heydays as far as sponsorship of professional fishermen. Because what happened is Walmart became a partner with FLW, and the game shot through the roof. They brought in a bunch of non-endemic companies. You started seeing, companies like Kellogg's and, different, vendors at Walmart. They were becoming major players. I was sponsored by Fujifilm through Walmart for 7 years with FLW. And entry fees were still relatively low. And there was not only the non-endemic companies in there, but there were also, the payouts were really good. The entry fees were still pretty low. The payouts were higher than they've ever been. We had a bunch of tournaments during that range where, $200,000 for first. They were paying $1 million. First place in the Forestwood Cup. Ranger M1 tournament paid $1 million. There's a lot of money to be made. This was the heyday, the golden era of professional bass fishing as far as in terms of being a professional angler, because even at that time, you still didn't have a lot of pros out there, because you had the FLW Tour and you had the Bassmaster Top 150. I fished both of them at the same time. So I was immersed in the whole thing up to my neck. And a lot of the same anglers fished both circuits. So you still didn't have a lot of anglers competing for that prize money. It was a good time to be a pro. During that time frame in my career, I was killing it as far as making money relative to fishing, and a lot of other pros were too, not just myself. It was a good time to be a pro fisherman. Now, what happened on that was this lasted up until about 2004, and then Walmart started, the vendors started pulling out of the sponsorships, and the team deals started going away. And as a result, the payouts went down and the entry fees went up with an FLW. At the same time, Bassmaster were struggling. They had a hard time getting their foot in the door. FLW had really put a lot of pressure on them. They were struggling. They had a hard time. And that period from about 2005 until 2008, things were sort of on the downturn. And in 2008, guys, the world basically came to an end in pro fishing. When in the fall of 2008, when we had the stock market crash, it devastated tournament sponsorships. Every single pro I know, including myself, within a week of that stock market crash, lost between 50% to 100% of their sponsorship revenue. I lost probably 80% of my sponsorship revenue in 1 week. The first thing those companies did is they cut all their marketing budgets, and it devastated the fishing industry. And what happened is it took several years to crawl out of that. And during that period, all the companies made huge cuts. They quit paying people. They cut people back big time. They got rid of people. It was a terrible time to be a pro fisherman from about 2008 until 2000. For about the next 10 years, it got really tough, because what happened as the economy slowly started rebounding, in 2010, 12, 14, all through there, the companies realized that they didn't have to pay fishermen anything anymore, because they were willing. If they got cut back so much during 2008 and they didn't go anywhere, so the companies realized, hey, these guys, they took little to nothing. Why should we up it? Just because we have the ability to do that. And that's what a lot of them did. A lot of them never got back to the pre-2008 numbers as far as sponsorship goes. And at the same time, when all this was happening, there's more and more people getting into the industry, into the fishing end of it. There's more tournaments coming up into it. There's more competition. There's less money on the endemic side. And then it started getting tougher and tougher and tougher, to where you get now, 2023, guys, right now, and I've been in this, all of my income has been come through the fishing industry since 1985. 2020, the 2020s, right, between 2020, 2023, we're in right now, is the toughest time to be a professional fisherman in terms of sponsorships. It's extremely difficult to get sponsorships out there, because a couple different things. First of all, the industry is saturated with fishermen out there. So it's very difficult for any angler to stand out. And it wasn't so 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you had quite a few guys that could really stand out and really make a name for themselves. But now there are so many tournaments, so many tournament fishermen. You got so many new people coming into the sport that companies simply, they don't want to and they don't have to invest in people as far as retainers and sponsorships. It's next to impossible to get a really good deal right now, unless you find some type of a non-endemic situation through your social media avenues. And that's where we've morphed here now. It's like the tournament end of it, as far as if you're an upcoming tournament angler out there and you're wanting to make a living in the sport, you can pretty much forget about making a living through sponsorships. If you do, it's an exception to the rule. What you have to do now, we've talked about this before, not really I want to go into it in this video, is you have to capitalize on the social media opportunities that come with that. Anymore, you can talk to about any marketing person in a fishing tackle company, and they will tell you that you are not a pro fisherman. You are basically a social media influencer that fishes, that fishes tournaments. That's where the value lies, and that's where the morph has been, especially over the last few years. And it's not going to change, guys. The sport is never going to go back to those golden years of the late 90s and early 2000s in terms of the industry, simply because of social media that didn't exist then, and the fact that there's just too many tournament fishermen and too many tournaments, to support everybody. That's all there is to it. So what you have to do now in order to succeed on that end is you have to be creative with your marketing, and that marketing comes completely through social media out there. The tournament payouts are so pathetic right now, and the entry fees and expenses are so out of control that tournaments, for the most part, for 95% of the guys out there, they're money pits. You might as well take your $100,000 it takes to fish the Elite Series and go, put it on blackjack in Las Vegas, because you probably got a better chance of winning some money in Las Vegas. It is extremely difficult to not turn that into a money pit. 90% of the people do. They lose money. 90% of the anglers lose money every year. So you have to parlay that again into being creative through social media. So that's sort of the brief history of it, guys. Like I said, it's changed a lot. It's just the nature of competition, and it hadn't been a good thing. I mean, I don't see it being a good thing for the sport, because one of the things about bass fishing is we have to draw a fine line. As we always want to encourage people to get into fishing, but fishing isn't like other sports out there. We have a finite playing field, and the more the sport grows, the more that the sport suffers inherently to a large degree with that increased pressure. With more tournaments, with more anglers, it not only makes fishing tougher, it makes succeeding in the fishing industry tougher out there. So that's sort of an issue that we have to address moving forward. We talked about that a little bit before, about what that can look like, but that's sort of the reality and the situation that has been created by some controlled and some uncontrolled variables, both within the industry and outside of the industry both. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on it, guys. Let me know what y'all think about it, and we'll talk later. See you.